I never thought my life would change because of a damn pole. Yet here I was, standing in Captain Thompson's office, staring at her like she'd lost her mind. The autumn rain pelted against the windows of the Rochester PD, matching my mood perfectly. "You want me to what?" I adjusted my detective badge, the metal cool against my fingers. "Go undercover at Velvet Dreams. We've tracked suspicious money movements." Sarah Thompson's stern face softened. "Marina, you're our best shot." I ran my fingers through my dark hair, my green eyes narrowing. "A strip club? Really?" "As a cocktail waitress," she clarified. "We need someone inside." That night, I found myself pushing through the club's heavy doors. The bass vibrated through my bones as I navigated the dimly lit space. Tony Romano, the owner, barely glanced at my fake resume before hiring me. "Start tonight," he grunted, eyes fixed on his computer screen. The locker room smelled of perfume and hairspray. As I changed into the required black dress, a flash of golden hair caught my attention. She moved like liquid sunshine, practicing her routine in front of the mirror. "You're new." Her blue eyes met mine in the reflection. "I'm Quinn." "Marina," I managed, trying not to stare at her graceful movements. My first shift was chaos. Drink orders blurred together as I weaved between tables. Then Quinn took the stage, and time stopped. She didn't just dance, she told stories with her body, commanding attention without being crude. I nearly dropped my tray. "Keep it together," I muttered to myself. After closing, I dragged myself home to my small apartment. An elegant envelope waited in my mailbox, Rochester University's logo gleaming in the corner. Inside was an offer that made my heart stop. A full scholarship for my dream forensic science program. The catch? Marriage. The grant was from an old money family foundation with traditional values. They required recipients to be properly settled. Their words, not mine. The deadline? 6 months. I collapsed onto my couch, the letter crumpling in my hand. The universe had a sick sense of humor. Here I was, working undercover in a strip club, falling for a dancer I couldn't have, and now this. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. "Money trail leads to James Scott. Watch for him." I closed my eyes, exhausted. My first day undercover had already complicated everything. Quinn's face floated in my mind, her mysterious smile haunting me. The scholarship letter seemed to burn in my hand, a ticket to everything I'd worked for. "Damn it," I whispered to my empty apartment. I had no idea my life was about to become even more complicated. After a week of late nights and suspicious transactions at Velvet Dreams, I needed an escape. The Lamberton Conservatory beckoned with its promise of peace. November's chill had stripped the trees bare, but inside, it was eternal spring. I wandered through the humid air, past exotic flowers and towering palms. The glass dome above filtered the afternoon light, creating dancing shadows. My mind kept drifting between the scholarship letter and Quinn's performances, both equally dangerous to dwell on. Well, this is unexpected. I spun around. Quinn stood there, looking different in jeans and a sweater. Her blonde hair was loose around her shoulders, catching the golden light. My heart did that stupid flutter thing. "Hiding from Tony too?" She smiled, moving closer. "Just needed some green." I gestured vaguely at the plants. "The club gets a bit dark." We walked together, talking about nothing and everything. Quinn knew the names of flowers I'd never heard of. Her eyes lit up when she spoke about dance, her real passion. "Look at this." She grabbed my hand, pulling me toward a corner display. "It's about to bloom." The plant was unremarkable, ganglion green, but the bud at its tip promised something special. "Night blooming cereus," Quinn explained. "It flowers for one night only. The gardener said it's happening tonight." I checked my watch. "My shift starts in 3 hours. Call in sick." Her blue eyes challenged me. Some things are worth breaking rules for. I shouldn't have stayed. Every minute with Quinn complicated my investigation. But I called Sarah with a fake cough and settled onto a bench beside Quinn. We watched the sun set through the glass walls. Other visitors drifted away, leaving us alone with the gathering darkness and the promise of a rare bloom. "Why dance?" I asked, immediately regretting the potential landmine. Quinn was quiet for a moment. "Freedom," she finally said. "When I dance, I'm not what people assume. I'm just me." The serious bud began to stir as darkness fell. Slowly, impossibly, white petals unfurled like stars being born. The flower's perfume filled our corner of the conservatory. "Beautiful," I whispered, not sure if I meant the flower or Quinn's expression of wonder. "Life's full of moments like this," she said softly. "Perfect things that only last one night." Our shoulders touched. I could feel her warmth through my jacket. The investigation, the scholarship, my tangled web of lies, everything felt distant compared to this moment. "Tell me something real," Quinn said, still watching the flower. "Something true." I almost did. The words rose in my throat about my badge, my assignment, my growing feelings for her. Instead, I said, "I'm scared of where my life is heading." She turned to me then, moonlight painting her face silver. "Aren't we all?" The flower bloomed fully, its white petals a beacon in the darkness. We sat there, two women with secrets, watching nature's brief miracle. By morning, the bloom would be gone. But something else was beginning. Something that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. Walking home later, I realized I'd learned nothing useful for my case. But I'd learned that Quinn smelled like jasmine, that she had a small scar above her right eyebrow, and that watching her watch a flower bloom was more captivating than any dance routine. I was in trouble. Deep, career-ending, heartbreaking trouble. The weeks after the conservatory blurred together like watercolors in rain. By day, I filed reports to Sarah about suspicious cash deposits and mysterious meetings. By night, I watched Quinn dance while pretending my heart didn't race every time she looked my way. "The numbers don't add up," I muttered, reviewing the club's books during my break. Tony's office computer would have more, but getting access seemed impossible. "Talking to yourself?" Quinn appeared in the break room doorway, still glowing from her performance. I slammed my notebook shut. Bad habit. She collapsed into the chair beside me, close enough that our knees touched. "You're different from the other waitresses," she said. "You watch everything. Professional curiosity." I tried to smile naturally. "Is that what we're calling it?" Her voice dropped lower. "I've seen how you watch me." My throat went dry. "Quinn. The way your eyes follow my movements." She leaned closer. "The way you bite your lip when I'm on stage." The break room suddenly felt too small, too warm. I should have made an excuse, maintained my cover, kept my distance. Instead, I sat there, drowning in the scent of her perfume. "Tell me I'm wrong," she whispered. The security camera's red light blinked in the corner, reminding me of all the reasons this was a terrible idea. But Quinn's eyes held mine, and years of training couldn't stop what happened next. She kissed me first, or maybe I kissed her. It didn't matter. What mattered was the soft press of her lips, the quiet sound she made when I pulled her closer. The world narrowed to this moment, this feeling. A door slammed somewhere in the club. We jumped apart like guilty teenagers. Quinn touched her lips, smiling that mysterious smile that had first caught my attention. "I've wanted to do that since the flower," she admitted. Before I could respond, Tony's voice boomed through the club, calling for Quinn. She squeezed my hand once before disappearing, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts and the weight of my lies. That night, sleep eluded me. I stared at my case notes, seeing patterns in the money trails that led to bigger players than Tony. But my mind kept drifting to Quinn's kiss, to the way she'd looked at me like I was something precious. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Meeting tomorrow. Bring everything you have." I touched my lips, still feeling Quinn's kiss. How could I tell my supervisor that I'd crossed the line? That I was compromised in ways that went beyond professional ethics? The scholarship letter sat on my nightstand, another reminder of the choices ahead. 6 months to decide between a fake marriage for my dream education or, what? A real connection with someone who didn't even know my true identity? In the darkness of my apartment, I could admit the truth to myself. I was falling for Quinn Williams, and it would probably destroy us both. Every moment we shared pulled me deeper into a web of deception that would eventually unravel. But in the empty dressing room the next evening, when Quinn pulled me into another kiss, I couldn't make myself care. Her hands tangled in my hair, and my badge seemed to burn in its hiding place, a constant reminder of my betrayal. "You make me feel safe," Quinn murmured against my neck. The irony of her words hit me like a physical blow. I held her tighter, wishing I could freeze time in this moment, before everything inevitably fell apart. Outside the dressing room, the club's music thumped like a heartbeat. Soon, Quinn would dance again. I would serve drinks, and we'd both pretend this stolen moment hadn't happened. But something had shifted, as irreversible as the blooming of that night flower. I was no longer just playing a role. I was living a double life, and both sides felt equally real, equally true. The question was, which truth would destroy me first? He arrived on a Tuesday, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. James Scott, the man Sarah had warned me about. I watched him claim a VIP table, his presence changing the energy of the entire club. "That's our golden ticket," Tony announced in the pre-shift meeting. "Make him happy." Quinn caught my eye across the room, her expression unreadable. She was scheduled to perform in an hour, and suddenly, I didn't want James watching her. "Marina," Tony's voice cut through my thoughts. "You're handling his table." Perfect for my investigation, terrible for my heart. I approached James's table, notepad ready. His eyes traveled over me with practiced appreciation. "What's your poison?" I asked, keeping my tone professional. "Macallan 25, neat." He smiled, all perfect teeth and confidence. "And your company, if you're not too busy." Over the next hour, I played my role, laughing at his jokes, dropping hints about my financial struggles and dreams of further education. When Quinn took the stage, I watched James watching her, my stomach churning. "Magnificent," he murmured, eyes fixed on Quinn. "But you're more interesting." After my shift, Quinn found me in the parking lot. "He asked about you." "James?" I tried to sound casual. "Tony's pushing for something." She stepped closer, her warmth a contrast to the cold night. "Be careful." The next day, Quinn insisted on helping me prepare for what we both knew was coming. We used the empty club floor during daylight hours, her teaching me enough about movement to seem more graceful. "You're too stiff," she said, her hands on my hips. "Feel the music." But all I could feel was her touch, her breath on my neck. We moved together, her body guiding mine in a dance that had nothing to do with my cover. "Better." Her voice was soft. "Now you might survive a dinner date." I turned to face her. "How did you?" "Tony told me." Something flashed in her eyes. "James requested you for dinner tomorrow night." The perfect opportunity for my investigation. The worst moment for my heart. Quinn's hands were still on my hips, but there was tension in her fingers now. "It's just business," I said, meaning more than she could know. "Everything's business in this world." She stepped back, leaving me cold. "Just don't let him change you." James's dinner invitation arrived with flowers, roses, not the subtle beauty of the serious Quinn and I had watched bloom. The restaurant was exactly what I expected. High ceilings, crystal glasses, discreet waiters. "You're wasted at that club," James said over wine that cost more than I made in a week. "We all have to start somewhere." I played with my napkin, thinking of Quinn's dance lessons. I could help. He reached for my hand. "I have connections at Rochester University." My heart stopped. How much did he know about the scholarship? About me? "That's generous," I managed. "I believe in investing in potential." His thumb stroked my wrist. We could help each other. Later that night, I found Quinn waiting by my car. She looked at my dress, my carefully styled hair, and something broke in her expression. "Did you have a nice date?" Her voice was sharp enough to cut. "It wasn't like that." "No?" She stepped closer, anger and something else in her eyes. "Then, what was it like?" Instead of answering, I kissed her. She resisted for a moment before melting into me, her hands gripping my dress like she was afraid I'd disappear. "I don't want him," I whispered against her lips. "I never did." But later, alone in my apartment, I stared at my case notes. James had revealed enough over dinner to confirm Sarah's suspicions. He was connected to everything. The money laundering, the scholarship foundation, possibly worse. My phone lit up with a text from him. "Dinner again tomorrow?" Another text followed, this one from Quinn. "Miss you already." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of lies and love and duty pressing down on me. Every step forward with this case seemed to take me further from Quinn, yet closer to the truth we both needed to face. The scholarship deadline loomed, James was circling closer, and Quinn. Quinn was becoming the only truth I wanted to hold on to. Something had to break, and soon. The pieces started falling into place like dominoes. Each dinner with James revealed more about his connection to Tony's operation. Money moved through the club, clean cash mixed with dirty, and somewhere in the middle was the scholarship foundation. "The girls are getting restless," Tony said one night, not knowing I was within earshot. "Keep them happy." "That's what the foundation is for," James replied. "Give them hope, keep them quiet." I ducked into the dressing room, my mind racing. The scholarship wasn't just about marriage, it was hush money, a way to control people who knew too much. Thunder rolled outside, matching my darkening thoughts. Quinn was practicing her routine, but something was off about her movements. She caught my eye in the mirror, stopped mid-spin. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. "Just tired." I leaned against the wall, watching her. "How long have you known James?" Her shoulders tensed. "He's been coming here for years." "Has he offered to help you? With your dance studio dreams?" Quinn turned to face me fully. "What's really going on, Marina?" Before I could answer, the power went out. Thunder crashed closer, and emergency lights cast everything in eerie blue. Quinn moved toward me in the darkness. "Finally alone," she whispered. Her kiss was different this time. Desperate, questioning. My back hit the wall as she pressed closer. Outside, the storm raged, but in here everything was heat and want, and Quinn's hands mapping my body like territory she needed to claim. "Wait," I gasped. But then her lips found my neck, and waiting seemed impossible. The emergency lights flickered as clothing was pushed aside as hands grew bolder. Quinn whispered my name like a prayer, and I answered with touches that said everything I couldn't voice. Later, adjusting our clothes in the dim light, reality crashed back. Quinn's lipstick was smudged, her hair wild, and I had never seen anything more beautiful or terrifying. "I should go check the breakers," she said, but her eyes stayed on me. "Be careful." The words carried more weight than they should. After she left, I noticed Tony watching me from his office doorway. His expression made my skin crawl. "Interesting show," he said quietly. My blood ran cold. Had he seen? Known? The cameras were down with the power, but Tony's eyes held something calculating. "Just waiting out the storm," I managed. "Sure." He smiled without warmth. "James won't like that." The threat was clear. I spent the rest of my shift feeling Tony's eyes on me, watching Quinn with new wariness. When she tried to catch my attention, I kept my distance. The storm passed, but the tension remained. Quinn cornered me as I was leaving. "You're avoiding me." "Tony knows," I said quietly. "So?" Her defiance was beautiful and dangerous. "Let him know." "It's not that simple." "Because of James?" She stepped closer. "Or because of whatever you're hiding?" I froze. "What do you mean?" "You ask questions about everything." Her voice dropped. "You watch too carefully. You're not who you say you are." The parking lot was empty except for us and the puddles reflecting streetlights. I could tell her everything, risk the case, risk lives. Instead, I kissed her softly, a goodbye I couldn't voice. "Everyone has secrets," I whispered. "Not from me," she said. "Not anymore." But I walked away, feeling her eyes on my back, knowing Tony was probably watching from his office window. The case was close to breaking, and I couldn't risk Quinn getting caught in the crossfire. My phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Money trail confirmed. Moving soon." I looked back at the club, at Quinn's silhouette in the doorway. The storm had passed, but something worse was coming. I could feel it in the air, in the way Tony had smiled, in the secrets pressing against my chest. Quinn deserved the truth. But the truth could get her killed. The scholarship deadline letter sat on my kitchen table like a ticking bomb. 2 weeks left to decide. James had made his intentions clear. Dinner dates had become more frequent, his touches more possessive. Each meeting yielded more evidence of his crimes, but at what cost? "You're distracted," he said, over yet another expensive dinner. "Just thinking about the future." I forced a smile. "I could make your future very comfortable." He pulled out a small velvet box. Very comfortable indeed. My heart stopped. Inside was a diamond ring that probably cost more than my yearly salary. The restaurant seemed to fade away as I stared at it. "James R. Don't answer yet." He closed the box. "Just know it's yours when you're ready." I fled to Quinn's apartment after dinner. She opened the door in dance shorts and an oversized sweater, her hair messy from sleep. "Marina?" Her surprise turned to concern. "What's wrong?" I kissed her before she could ask more questions. She responded instantly, pulling me inside, pushing me against the closed door. My hands found skin under her sweater as thunder rumbled outside, another storm rolling in. "Wait," she breathed against my neck. "Talk to me." Instead, I kissed her harder. We stumbled to her bedroom, leaving a trail of clothes. Quinn's skin glowed in the streetlight filtering through her window. Everything about her was grace and strength and beauty. "You're shaking," she whispered, hovering over me. "I need you," I managed. "Just you." She took me apart slowly, thoroughly, until I forgot about James and badges and scholarships. Until the only truth was Quinn's hands and lips, and the way she whispered my name. After, as rain pelted the windows, she traced patterns on my bare shoulder. "Now tell me what's really wrong." I stared at the ceiling, memorizing this moment. "If you could have everything you've ever wanted but the price was losing something real, would you take it?" "Depends on what's real." She propped herself up on an elbow. "Is this real, Marina?" "More real than anything." "Then don't lose it." But it wasn't that simple. The next morning, Sarah called an emergency meeting. "We're moving soon. James is planning something big." I thought of the ring, the scholarship, the way Tony watched Quinn and me. "How soon?" "Days, maybe hours. Stay close to him." That night at the club, James waited in the VIP section. The ring box sat on the table between us. "Time to choose, Marina." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "The scholarship board meets tomorrow." Quinn took the stage then, her routine more sensual than usual. Our eyes met as she danced, and everything in me ached. James watched my reaction carefully. "Beautiful, isn't she?" His voice held an edge. It would be a shame if something happened to her dance studio plans. The threat was clear. I thought of Quinn's dreams, of the evidence in my apartment, of the choices closing in around me. "I need time," I said. "Time's running out." He pushed the ring box closer. "For everyone." Later, I found Quinn in the dressing room. She kissed me before I could speak, backing me against her makeup table. "I'm leaving the club," she whispered against my lips. "Come with me." "Quinn. I've saved enough." Her eyes were bright with hope. "We could start fresh, somewhere new." My heart cracked. In another life, I would have said yes instantly. But the case was too close to breaking, and Quinn was already in danger. "I can't," I said softly. She stepped back like I'd slapped her. "Because of James?" "It's complicated." "No," she said. "It's really not. You either want this or you don't." I reached for her, but she moved away. Through the mirror, I saw Tony watching from the doorway, his expression triumphant. Everything was unraveling. The choice between duty and love had never felt more impossible. Quinn's hurt expression, James's ring, Sarah's deadline, all of it pressed in on me until I could barely breathe. I left the club that night knowing something had to give. I just didn't know it would be my heart. The locker room was empty when Quinn found my badge. I'd been careless, distracted by James's threats and Sarah's pressure. The small metal shield slipped from its hiding place as I changed, landing with a damning clatter. Quinn's sharp intake of breath made me turn. She held my badge like it might burn her, her blue eyes wide with betrayal. "Detective Marina Peterson," she read slowly. "Rochester PD. Quinn, I can explain." "Can you?" Her voice cracked. "Was any of it real?" Before I could answer, the door opened. Tony stood there, his expression shifting from surprise to understanding. Well, he smiled coldly. "This explains a lot." Quinn backed away from both of us, still clutching my badge. The hurt in her eyes felt worse than any physical pain. "Quinn, please." I reached for her. "Don't touch me." She threw the badge at my feet. "Don't you dare touch me." Rain pounded against the windows as she ran out, leaving me alone with Tony. His hand moved toward his jacket, and instinct made me dive for cover as the first shot rang out. I scrambled behind the lockers, cursing myself for leaving my gun in the car. Tony's footsteps echoed on the tile floor. "You cops never learn." Another shot pinged off metal. "Always thinking you're smarter than everyone else." I threw a heel at the mirror, using the shattering glass as cover to run. The hallway stretched endlessly as bullets chased me. Outside, the rain had become a downpour. Quinn stood in the parking lot, soaked and shaking. Was it all a lie? The case was real. I moved toward her. The money laundering, the scholarship scam. But us? Quinn, that was real. How can I believe you? Tony's voice cut through the rain. She's been playing us both, Quinn. He emerged from the club, gun trained on me. Quinn looked between us, confusion and hurt warring on her face. The Scholarship Foundation, I said quickly. It's how they control people. James uses it to keep witnesses quiet. Shut up, Tony snarled. Think about it, Quinn. How many girls got offered help, then disappeared? Understanding dawned in her eyes. Tony saw it too. His gun shifted toward her. Don't, I warned. You've ruined everything. He aimed at Quinn's heart. Both of you. I lunged as he fired. The bullet grazed my shoulder instead of hitting Quinn. We fell together on the wet pavement as police sirens wailed in the distance. Marina. Quinn's hands pressed against my wound. Tony ran as squad cars appeared, red and blue lights painting the rain. Sarah led the charge, but I barely noticed. Quinn's tears mixed with raindrops on my face. I'm sorry, I whispered. I wanted to tell you so many times. Why didn't you trust me? Because I fell in love with you. The words tumbled out. I couldn't risk your safety. She stared at me, mascara running down her cheeks. The paramedics arrived, trying to separate us, but Quinn held on. I need time, she said finally, letting go of my hand. I watched her walk away through the rain, her shoulders straight despite everything. Sarah appeared in my line of sight. Tony's in the wind, she said. But we've got enough to move on, James. I barely heard her. The pain in my shoulder was nothing compared to the ache in my chest. Quinn's last look haunted me, not anger anymore, but something worse, disappointment. We'll need her testimony, Sarah continued. Give her space. I winced as paramedics cleaned my wound. I've taken enough from her already. The rain continued to fall as they loaded me into the ambulance. Somewhere in the city, Quinn was processing betrayal and truth. Somewhere Tony was running, and James was still out there, not knowing his world was about to collapse. But all I could think about was Quinn's face in the rain, and how some mistakes can't be undone with just an apology. 3 days after the shooting, I was back at work against medical advice. My shoulder throbbed, but the pain kept me focused. Quinn hadn't returned my calls, and Tony was still missing. James knows. Sarah dropped a file on my desk. He's liquidating accounts. The sting? Tonight. She studied my face. Are you sure you're up for this? I thought of Quinn's tears in the rain. Let's end this. The plan was simple. Meet James for dinner, wear a wire, get him talking about the foundation. SWAT would be waiting nearby. But when I arrived at the restaurant, James wasn't alone. Marina. Tony sat beside him, looking smug. Join us. My hand instinctively moved toward my concealed weapon. James raised an eyebrow. Now. He gestured to the chair. Let's be civil. I sat, feeling the weight of the wire against my skin. Through my earpiece, Sarah whispered, Keep them talking. Quite a performance, James said, sipping his wine. The dedicated waitress, the struggling student. You should know about performances. I met his gaze. Your scholarship foundation's quite the show. Tony laughed. She's got spirit, I'll give her that. Had spirit, James corrected. He pulled out his phone, showing me a video. My blood froze. Quinn was tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse. Her face was bruised, but her eyes still blazed with defiance. Where is she? My voice shook. Safe, for now. James pocketed the phone. The question is, how much is her safety worth to you? The wire felt like it was burning my skin. Sarah's voice crackled. Keep him talking, we're tracing the video. What do you want? The evidence. Tony leaned forward. All of it. And Quinn? Will be released once we're satisfied. James smiled. You have 1 hour. They left me sitting there, staring at my untouched wine. Sarah was in my ear immediately. Marina, wait for backup. I ripped out the earpiece and ran to my car. The evidence was in a safety deposit box, photos, account numbers, recordings. Everything needed to bring down their operation. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, an address and a warning. Come alone, or she dies. The warehouse district was deserted at this hour. I found the building easily, abandoned, windows broken, perfect for hiding secrets. Inside, chains hung from rusty beams, and water dripped somewhere in the darkness. My shoulders screamed as I drew my gun. Quinn? A muffled sound led me deeper into the warehouse. She was there, just like in the video, but her eyes widened in warning too late. Something hard hit the back of my head. As I fell, I saw Tony's shoes step into view. Predictable, he said. I woke up tied to a chair opposite Quinn. James watched us both, looking amused. Love makes people so stupid, he mused. Quinn caught my eye. Despite her bruises, she managed a small smile. Something passed between us, understanding, forgiveness, maybe both. The evidence? Tony demanded. Safety deposit box. My head throbbed. Bank of Rochester. See? James patted my cheek. That wasn't so hard. He nodded to Tony, who left presumably to retrieve the evidence. James pulled out a gun. Unfortunately, loose ends need tying. They'll find you, I said. They'll find two tragic victims of a jealous lover's quarrel. He aimed at Quinn, the detective who couldn't handle rejection. Wait. I struggled against the ropes. Kill me if you want, but let her go. Marina, don't, Quinn whispered. James laughed. How noble, but I'm afraid. The window above us shattered. Smoke filled the warehouse as SWAT rappelled down. James fired wildly, but it was too late. Police, drop your weapon. In the chaos, I saw James run toward a back exit. My chair had splintered in the commotion, leaving my hands free. Get Quinn! I shouted to the nearest officer, then ran after James. My shoulder burned with every movement, but adrenaline pushed me forward. James had taken everything from too many people. He wasn't getting away. The chase ended on the warehouse roof. Rain began to fall because of course it did. Every important moment with Quinn seemed to happen in the rain. It's over, James. I aimed my backup gun from my ankle holster. He turned, his own weapon raised. Nothing's over until I say it is. We faced each other in the rain, both knowing only one of us would walk away. Lightning split the sky as James and I faced each other on the roof. My shoulders screamed in protest as I held my gun steady. You really think you can shoot me? He smiled. Your arm's shaking. He was right. The injury made it hard to maintain aim. But I'd been shot because of this man. Watched Quinn cry because of him. Anger steadied my hand. The foundation, I said. How many girls did you silence? They were all willing participants. He stepped closer. Just like your Quinn. She has a name. Had a name. His smile turned cruel. Tony should be finishing that loose end right about now. Ice filled my veins. Tony hadn't gone to the bank, he'd stayed behind. I turned instinctively toward the warehouse entrance and James struck. The gun flew from my hand as he tackled me. We rolled across the wet roof, trading blows. My shoulder wound reopened, but adrenaline dulled the pain. You ruined everything, he snarled, fingers around my throat. Through darkening vision, I saw movement behind him. Quinn stood there, bloody but alive, holding my dropped gun. Get off her, she commanded. James laughed without turning. Or what? You're a dancer, sweetheart, not a fighter. The gunshot echoed across the roof. James's eyes widened as he looked down at his shoulder. Quinn hadn't killed him, but she'd made her point. I said, get off her. He rolled away, clutching his wound. I gasped for air as Sarah and the SWAT team burst onto the roof. Tony's in custody, Sarah announced as they cuffed James. The evidence? Safe, I managed. Bank of Rochester. Quinn helped me up, her touch gentle despite everything. She looked fierce in the rain, like an avenging angel. You came back, I whispered. I heard them planning. She touched my face. I couldn't let them hurt you. The paramedics insisted on taking us both to the hospital. In the ambulance, Quinn held my hand as they checked my reopened wound. I'm sorry, I said. For lying, for putting you in danger. I understand why you did it. She squeezed my fingers. I'm sorry too for running that night. The hospital kept me overnight for observation. Quinn refused to leave, curling up in the uncomfortable chair beside my bed. You should go home, I told her. Get some rest. I'm done running from this. She moved to sit on the bed's edge. From us. Her kiss tasted like rain and promise. When she pulled back, her eyes were serious. No more lies? No more lies, I agreed. Sarah visited in the morning with news. Tony had confessed everything, hoping for a deal. The Scholarship Foundation's records revealed years of blackmail and coercion. The DA wants your testimony, she told Quinn. Both of you. Quinn straightened. I'll tell them everything. And the real scholarship board? Wants to meet you. Sarah smiled at Quinn. They're very interested in your dance studio proposal. Later, as sunlight finally broke through the clouds, Quinn lay beside me in the narrow hospital bed. I was so angry when I found your badge, she admitted. But watching you chase after James, knowing you might die trying to save me. I love you, I said simply. Badge or no badge. She kissed me softly. I love you too, Detective Peterson. Outside, Rochester was waking up. Somewhere, James and Tony were facing justice. The truth about the foundation would soon be public. But in that moment, all that mattered was Quinn's warmth beside me, and the future stretching out before us. A future without lies or shadows, just the simple truth of us. What happens now? She asked. I pulled her closer, careful of my bandages. Now we start over, together. The morning light painted her hair gold, reminding me of that first night I saw her dance. Some things I realized were meant to be, badge, lies, and all. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when Quinn and I arrived for the hearing. 3 months had passed since the warehouse, but my shoulders still ached in cold weather. Ready? I squeezed her hand. She wore a conservative blue dress, her dancer's grace evident even now. Born ready. Inside, James and Tony sat with their lawyers. They both looked smaller somehow, their power stripped away. James wouldn't meet my eyes, but Tony stared at Quinn with naked hatred. The prosecution presented their evidence methodically. Bank records showed years of money laundering through Velvet Dreams. The Scholarship Foundation had been a masterpiece of manipulation, offering dreams in exchange for silence. Then it was Quinn's turn to testify. Miss Williams, the prosecutor began, please tell the court about your experience with the defendants. Quinn's voice stayed steady as she described everything, the subtle threats, the promises of help with her dance studio, the way they used dreams as weapons. They told us we could have everything, she said, as long as we played by their rules. And if you didn't? Things happened. Girls disappeared, dreams died. During cross-examination, James's lawyer tried to paint her as a willing participant. Quinn's eyes found mine in the gallery. I was afraid, she admitted, until someone showed me the truth was stronger than fear. My testimony followed. I detailed the investigation, the evidence, the night at the warehouse. James's lawyer focused on my relationship with Quinn. Wasn't this a conflict of interest, Detective Peterson? My feelings for Miss Williams didn't compromise the investigation, I said firmly. They revealed the human cost of your client's crimes. The scholarship board testified next. They'd had no idea their foundation was being used as a cover. Now they were working to help the real victims, including funding Quinn's dance studio. During a recess, Quinn found me in the hallway. You okay? Shouldn't I be asking you that? She smiled, touching my healed shoulder. We're both okay, that's what matters. The jury took only hours to reach a verdict, guilty on all counts. As they led James and Tony away, Quinn gripped my hand. It's really over. Outside, reporters shouted questions. We ignored them, walking toward my car through the autumn chill. The board wants to meet tomorrow, Quinn said. About the studio. Nervous? Terrified. She laughed. But the good kind of terrified. That night, in our new apartment, neutral territory, we'd decided, no ghosts of lies or secrets. Quinn danced in the living room. Not for money or survival, but for joy. I watched from the couch, remembering that first night at Velvet Dreams. She was even more beautiful now, free from shadows. Dance with me, she said, pulling me up. You know I have 2 left feet. Good thing I'm an excellent teacher. We swayed together, my hands on her hips like during those secret lessons. But now there were no lies between us, no hidden badges or unspoken truths. I got accepted, I said quietly. She pulled back to look at me. The forensics program? I nodded. Full scholarship, the real kind. Marina, that's amazing. She kissed me hard. When do you start? Next semester. If that's okay. Quinn's eyes softened. Why wouldn't it be okay? Because everything's changing. Your studio, my classes. Hey, she cupped my face. Changes are good, we're good. Later, tangled in sheets, Quinn traced the scar on my shoulder. Remember the night blooming serious? Of course. You said some things only last one night. She propped herself up on an elbow. But some things last forever. I pulled her down for a kiss, tasting promise and future on her lips. Outside, Rochester hummed with life. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the studio, classes, rebuilding lives. But tonight was just us, dancing in our living room, making plans that had nothing to do with lies or cases or survival. Forever, I agreed, holding her close. I like the sound of that. 1 year later, I stood in the Lamberton Conservatory, watching history repeat itself. The night blooming Sirius was ready to flower again, and this time, we'd planned it perfectly. Can't believe you rented the whole place, Quinn said, her blue dress matching the twilight outside. Some moments deserve privacy. The conservatory had changed little since that first night. Same humid air, same glass dome showing the darkening sky. But we were different, stronger, truer versions of ourselves. My forensics degree hung on our apartment wall now. Quinn's dance studio, Second Chances, had opened last month. She taught during the day and performed her own shows at night. No more strip clubs, no more secrets. Look, she pointed to the serious bud. It's starting. Just like before, we watched white petals slowly unfurl. Quinn leaned back against me, and I breathed in her familiar jasmine scent. Remember what you asked me that first night, she said, about why I danced? You said it was freedom. It was more than that. She turned to face me. I was looking for something real in a world of lies. Then you came along. And lied to you, I reminded her gently. But your heart told the truth. She touched my face. Even when your words couldn't. The flower opened fully, its perfume filling the air. Through the glass dome, stars winked at us like conspirators. I have something for you, I said. Marina. I pulled out a small box, not velvet like James's had been, but worn leather that had belonged to my grandmother. Before you say anything, I continued, this isn't because of tradition or expectations. This is because every time I see a flower bloom, or watch you dance, or wake up beside you, I fall in love all over again. Quinn's eyes shimmered as I opened the box. The ring was simple. A moonstone instead of a diamond, set in silver rather than gold. Marry me, I whispered. Not for scholarships or society or anyone else, just for us. She laughed through tears. You really thought I might say no? Well, our track record with life-changing questions isn't great. Instead of answering, she kissed me. The ring fit perfectly when I slid it onto her finger. Yes, she said against my lips. 1,000 times yes. The conservatory door opened, making us jump. But it was just the gardener, right on cue, carrying a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. Congratulations, he said with a wink, setting everything down before disappearing. We toasted under the blooming Sirius, its white petals glowing in the moonlight. Outside, Rochester sparkled with city lights, but in here, time seemed suspended. I have a surprise too, Quinn said suddenly. Better than my surprise? Different. She took a deep breath. The National Dance Foundation called. They want me to tour with their company. My heart skipped. Quinn, that's amazing. It means traveling, she said carefully, for months. Then we'll travel. I touched her ring. Your dreams are part of our story now. She smiled that smile that had first captured me at Velvet Dreams. Our story? Speaking of which. I nodded toward the door. Sarah entered first, followed by Quinn's dancers, my colleagues from the force, even the real scholarship board members. They carried food, music, more champagne. You planned a party? Quinn laughed. A celebration, I corrected. Of beginnings. As our friends filled the conservatory with joy, Quinn pulled me close for another kiss. "You know what I love most about us?" she whispered. "What's that?" "We bloomed in darkness, just like this flower. And now we dance in the light," I finished. The serious would fade by morning, but our story was just beginning. Quinn led me to the center of the conservatory, and as our first dance began, I finally understood what she'd meant about freedom. It wasn't about escaping the past or outrunning secrets. It was about choosing your own path, writing your own truth, and finding someone to share it with. Under glass stars and white petals, surrounded by love and possibility, we danced our way into forever.